10-11 high school football preview show. Chase, over the next 30 minutes or so, we'll take a deep look at some of our area teams, size up the season, talk to Jeff Motz of KFOR. Conor Booth, the talented running back from Bishop Neumann, is going to stop by, and hopefully we'll have a little fun along the way.
Yeah, should be a good time. We've spent the last 2 weeks talking about and covering these teams across the area, and now we're just, one sleep away from the pads clicking, the ball being kicked, and so it's kind of fun that we have a better scope of what this season's going to look like ahead of it and able to talk about it tonight.
There's a lot of potential across the capital city. We saw some talented teams, some talented individuals, and I don't know that there's certainly a favorite in the city race. It maybe is a toss-up, and I think there's a lot of intrigue for how Lincoln football is going to look this year. Yeah,
there's a lot of teams that are trying to make a name for themselves, and there's not a clear front runner across the city, which makes things interesting to see because there will be one team that pulls away ahead of the pack. And they always say in Class A it's dominated by Omaha, but it'd be great to see one of these Lincoln teams make the playoffs and be a contender.
I think there's a playoff contender or two across the capital city, and I think it probably starts with Lincoln East. This is a team that qualified for the playoffs a season ago, finished the year with a 7-4 record, made it to the quarterfinals. However, the team looks a little different for Lincoln East this year. There are some key returners, and John Gingery is back. I mean, the dean of coaches across the capital city, and when you go to a Ging practice, you get a lot of energy and a little bit of comedy too.
Yeah, I think, he could be handed whatever set of keys, and he knows how to drive the car. He's been doing it for years, as you've seen, and, it's one of the programs that has been the most consistent in Lincoln, but then also just competitively across the area, and, whoever they play, right? They open with a tough matchup tomorrow that's actually been moved up, as we mentioned tonight in our shows, to avoid weather. Is that correct?
That is.
And, but a very, talented roster where they excellent head coach, and it is going to look a little different. They're losing Dash Bauman, the talented running back who's committed to Wyoming, and he's gone, right? And then they've also brought in some different players that we might see, so their offense is going to look a little bit different. But I think they're still going to be a talented football team.
Starters returning at 11 position. Among the best of them, Mikhail Ford. He's a senior wide receiver defensive back. He's very athletic, and he kind of burst onto the scene last year. We'll see him intercept a few passes. But Ging told me that this team's going to operate like the past few years, the way Lincoln East football looked. They're going to attack you in space. They're not going to go 3 yards in a cloud of dust. They're going to try to maximize some matchups on the edge and try to win some football games that way. Of course, the big game with Lincoln East is facing Lincoln Southeast. It'll be on October 25th. Interesting note about the Spartans this year. Only 2 city opponents are on the schedule.
Yeah, they play a lot of interesting teams. North Platte, Grand Island. They play at Kearney, which is definitely a tough road matchup. And so they really have a schedule that is not really favoring them to play in the city just because some of the Lincoln teams, some of the non-Lincoln teams they're playing are pretty talented programs.
Shout out Ryan Manning. He's a transfer from Lincoln Southwest, the new quarterback for the Spartans. He can certainly sling it. And, the Spartans are going to also ask their quarterbacks to run the football a little bit as well. But we'll see some new faces in the skill position spots. But that's kind of the story on Lincoln East. I would say maybe they're the favorite in the capital city. I would consider maybe number 2, Lincoln Southwest.
Yeah, I think just, some of the talent and playmakers on that Lincoln Southwest team is definitely the next team up if you're talking Lincoln East, right? And last year there was a lot of questions with their head coach and Grant Trainowitz just trying to figure things out as he kind of takes over the program. But now you have some of those questions answered. You have Broxton Tepley coming in at quarterback. It was a competition between him and Ryan Manning last year. Now they're just all in on Broxton Tepley. So it's really going to be on his shoulders to play well. 1,100 passing yards last year, 8 touchdowns. So talented player, and then they have talented targets as well in players like Jackson Carpenter, who's committed to Nebraska.
On offense, the Silverhawks have starters back at 10 of the 11 spots. As you mentioned, the quarterback who played varsity as a freshman. We had an interesting soundbite that we aired on the news when we previewed the Silverhawks. It's a big jump going from midget football to varsity. No kidding. right?
Yeah.
He just skipped past freshman, reserve, JV, and went straight to varsity.
Well, and he's a taller quarterback. You know, his dad's actually the offensive coordinator. Definitely helped a little bit maybe in that QB battle. And there is the transfer portal, I guess, in high school football. And, you know, with Ryan Manning gone, he's got the keys to the offense. And they have talented playmakers on both sides of the ball. So this should be a pretty good Silverhawk team.
And we can't end our Silverhawks discussion without mentioning Jackson Carpenter. He's a Nebraska commit, a senior that'll play both on both sides of the ball. Plays wide receiver. He's very fast. He can make plays in space. He can go get the football, and he's a pretty good defensive back as well.
Yeah, elite speed, and that caught the attention of the Huskers for a good reason. And we'll see him in the end zone this year.
Moving on to Lincoln Southeast, a squad that went 6-4 a season ago. They also qualified for the playoffs like Lincoln East. In fact, that was the matchup in the playoffs. We got a city matchup in the first round between Lincoln East and Lincoln Southeast. The Knights have 11 starters back. They have a new quarterback. It's number 12 right there on your screen, Trey Bolin. He's a senior. He can sling it, and he can move as well. I'm really excited to watch Trey play at the varsity level.
Yeah, this is a talented Southeast team that, you know, as we were talking as we introed the show, they're probably the third team in Lincoln that could pull away from the pack and be that top playoff team, right? You know, people are ranking Lincoln East in preseason polls and stuff, but you can't forget about the Knights. And, you know, they're good on offense, but they're also great on defense. You had a chance to talk to Pierre Allen Jr., who's a Husker legacy, now a North Dakota commit, that's a talented football player.
He is a big dude, and he was another one that he was playing varsity football as a freshman, and they can utilize Pierre in a number of different ways. Offensively, he plays tight end. You could also move him to the fullback spot, and they bring him off the edge just like his old man, and when he gets going, he can beat if you're a left tackle and you have to block that guy, it might be a long night because Pierre Allen Jr. is just so talented. And, of course, Southeast has another Butenbach on the team, and, of course, he plays running back. Cash Butenbach tells me he wants to rush for 1,000 yards this year.
Yeah, it's an interesting team, and I think Coach Catula's really got a good grip on this season. You know, they open with a tough opponent at Grand Island, but they have a lot of winnable games on their schedule.
How about that? Week 2, Southeast, Southwest. I think everybody knows where they're going to be watching football in the capital city. That'll be a fantastic matchup.
Yeah, should be a good battle.
Moving on, we're going to go to Lincoln North Star. The Navigators coming off a playoff appearance. Yeah, they went to the postseason, and it was the first time LNS made it to the playoffs in a non-COVID year since 2015. Kind of came out of nowhere, and what a good story they were a season ago. They have a nice cast of players back from last year, and that includes Jordan Anderson, one of my favorite running backs in the capital city. Get this guy in space, and he is going to make a big play.
Yeah, and, you know, they are with a new quarterback this year. It's Tyrell Chapman coming in to play. They had Dean Donaldson last year, a Creighton Prep transfer. But that, even with a shaky offense at times, he was the difference maker going back to Jordan Anderson. The big playability, you know, as Matt Rule says, the guy that they block it for 4, he can get 80. And so I think for the Navigators, they're a very talented program and a team that, you know, once you get the taste of a playoff berth, you can kind of carry that momentum hopefully into another season.
Yeah, Beaudry Ball, another player we need to shout out for Lincoln North Star. I feel like he's been playing for the past 6 years. He hasn't, obviously, but every year his name comes up, and I believe he's a senior this year, and he's a big part of the glue and the culture there at Lincoln North Star. The Navigators went 5-5 a season ago, and they open with the city game. They're going to face Lincoln Southwest. That game is at 7 o'clock Friday night at Seacrest Field.
Yeah, that's a tough opening matchup, and I think their schedule probably gets easier as you go through the season. So hopefully they can win some games and potentially get back to the playoffs.
Chase, what do you think? North Star, do they improve on 5-5 from a season ago, or maybe it'll take a step backwards? It's hard to read this squad, in my opinion.
Well, I think that looking at their schedule, they have 4 or 5 games that are they're probably going to be the favorite. They play Omaha Northwest, they play Omaha South, they play some teams, but they play Southwest and they play Elkhorn South, so they play other schools that are just as talented as them or better. So I would say that I would look for them that they're projected, I would say, to get 5 wins again.
That was my team last year when we had that set the over-under wins. I said smash the over on Lincoln North Star just because they had so many returning pieces and they had a really nice quarterback in Dean Donaldson, and it hit. So I'm happy with it. The Navigators, we're friends right now.
Well, and you can't forget about their QB coach. Is he still there, right, Tommy?
He is not. They have new offensive and defensive coordinators this year.
Yeah, they had Tommy Armstrong kind of helping out, right?
Yes. So
But
there's a lot of new pieces with North Star. That's
Yeah.
why I say it's a little bit of a challenge to get a read on the Navigators in 2024. Let's go to Lincoln Northeast. 24-game losing streak. And I can confidently say I think it's going to end this year.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, it's always tough when the losses continue to build. When I was in high school, my junior and senior year, we didn't win a single football game. And I think it's tough because then you just become a team that people kind of write off your schedule, like, oh, that's a win. But yeah, they're trying to change things, and once they win one game, I think they'll boost a lot of confidence, just like when Lincoln Northwest got their first win. But this is a program that in the past, the Rockets used to be a decent team, but have really taken some steps back the past few years. And I think Javante Boyd, their head coach, being a former collegiate player, he knows how to play football and he knows how to coach football. So I think they definitely have the pieces this season to potentially pull out a win.
And they have good numbers. They have a good senior class. Chase, I've seen this team practicing Lincoln Northeast, and a few times I walked away going, that does not at all look anything like a team that's been winless the last 2 seasons. And I wouldn't be surprised if they strung a little winning streak together, because they open with with Omaha Northwest. They play Omaha Bryan. Then they play Omaha Benson. I'm not going to say they're going to win all 3, but I think we're going to have some positive news for the Rockets coming up here in the start of the season. They have 8 starters back. Drew Van Dyke is a wide receiver that's kind of a go-to guy for them. And like we said, it's a favorable schedule.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I definitely think they can pull out their first win in a while this season.
Lincoln High, meantime, is coming off a 2-7 campaign. They have 5 starters back on offense, 5 starters back on defense. A little bit of a slimmer roster this year for Mark Mackey and the Lynx. They open the season this coming Friday on the road. They have Lincoln Southeast playing in the capital city against them on October 4th. We've seen some really good teams out of Lincoln High. I think they have a little bit of a challenge this year. I know one of the bigger tasks over at Lincoln High is trying to get the participation numbers up. And from what I know, Richie Ross, the basketball coach, has been trying to encourage boys to go out for football. And Lincoln High is trying to seek its first winning season since 2018.
Yeah, and this is a Lincoln High team that even the coach said that this is a team that I think is one of the teams that's in Class A that has the least amount of seniors. I think they have less than potentially 15 or 20 seniors on the team. So leadership's obviously a big deal. You're going to have to lean on the few seniors they have. And this is a team that's, not trying to, win 7 or 8 games this season, but they're really more trying to build for the future and try to get their program up and running again, like the days when they had Darius Luff and Cedric Case just running up the scoreboard at Beechner. Those were before my time, but, I know those incredible athletes. And Lincoln High does have those athletes walking the halls. It's just, trying to get them into the program and get this program back to kind of a winning culture. And, one of the better home environments at times when they're doing well.
Oh, you love a game at Beechner Field, don't you?
You can see the Capitol in the background. It's pretty, and they can call that their home. Compared to Seacrest, they're not sharing turf.
Right. That is very true. Friday night at Beechner Field, that's always a good time. That's a look at the 6 Class A teams from the capital city. We're going to take a break here on the 10-11 High School Football Preview Show. When we come back, we're going to sit down and chat with KFOR Sports Director Jeff Motz. Jeff will be on the call for mini games on your radio dial this upcoming season. We'll get his thoughts about high school football across Lincoln coming up. Welcome back to 10-11's High School Football Preview Show as we look ahead to the 2024 campaign, which begins on Thursday night. There's one game in the capital city at Seacrest Field, then a full slate on Friday, and we can't wait. Another guy that can't wait, Jeff Motz from KFOR. Jeff, that's why you do radio and I don't, because you can speak better than I. But you got a full list of games to announce this year. What are you excited about?
I'm excited for the number of matchups that we got with some good teams here in Lincoln. Number one, we've got coming up in a few weeks, we got East and Southwest on the 19th. That's the Thursday night game on the 19th, because everything had to shift due to Nebraska and Illinois playing on Friday night. But we'll have East and Southeast later in the season. And then we open up our season on September 6th, which is a week from this Friday night, with Southwest and Southeast. So we've got some good city matchups on tap. And, traditionally the Southeast-Southwest matchup, you've been here a while, and you know that that's always been a big draw, anywhere from 5,000 to 1 year, 8,500 people at Seacrest just to watch those two teams play.
Right, that's going to be a fun night in the capital city. Chase and I just went through the 6 Class A teams from Lincoln. I'm having a hard time kind of diagnosing who's going to be the city champion, even though we can't really call a city champion because not everybody plays each other. But who's the best team? Who do you think?
Right now on paper, based on the experience and everybody coming back, probably Southwest, then maybe Lincoln East. I would not exclude Southeast right now or North Star. I think when you look at all the playoff teams that we had a year ago in Class A, I think all of them are pretty much legitimate, but probably on the other end, on the higher end right now, might be Southwest. And then you mentioned Northeast here. This is a chance for them to build up confidence. So it'll be interesting to see where all these city teams line up in the scheme of things, but it wouldn't shock me to see somebody like Southwest kind of emerge out in front maybe early on and maybe toward the end of the season too. We'll see.
I'm glad you brought up Lincoln Northeast. You're a Rocket. We're going to park here for a second.
I claim to be.
Well, you've got great insight with Lincoln Northeast High School and this football program. To me, it seems like despite the struggles over the past 2 years, there hasn't been a woe is me or a pity party attitude. I feel like they've continued to work, and they've positioned themselves to have a pretty good season.
I think the one thing they try to instill in the kids is to build confidence. Now, their schedule the last 2 year cycle was not in great favor for them.
Horrible.
It was horrible for them. They really did. They ended the season a year ago up at Omaha West Side. So this year it looks a lot more favorable. I mean, potentially 4, maybe 5 wins. We'll see. There's a couple of district games that could be in play for them that could be pretty tough. But, the first 3 weeks of the season, there's no question they could potentially be 3-0 to start out.
You said you like Southeast. I mean, this is maybe a team. It's crazy to say that the Knights might be flying under the radar, but I get the sense that they're flying under the radar.
I think they are. You mentioned Butenbeck back there, along with Pierre Allen Jr., who's a great athlete. Trey Bullen's going to be the new quarterback. And you hope that experience that Bullens has as a starter on the JV transitions well up to the starting level at the varsity level. So I could see them being a team that could be really tough at times. The one big test they got this year is Millard South. And there are some polls that have Millard South either at 1 or 2. I think they're the best team in Class A coming into this season, simply because of their junior class. So I think that's going to be the big test for Southeast this year. How can they do against a team like Millard South?
It's been a frustrating last few years. Like, the Omaha teams have really dominated the postseason.
Right.
And Lincoln, ever since, Noah Walters was quarterbacking at Lincoln East, those Spartan teams could challenge. Do you think any of these Lincoln teams are in a position where they could maybe make a run to Memorial Stadium?
Well, it's going to be tough. As you mentioned, the Metro has been very tough. You look at the top 5, you're looking at like West Side, Millard South, Kearney from outstate. You got Elkhorn South, and let's not forget Omaha North. You got at least Papillion, La Vista, Bellevue West that you could probably look at. So it's going to be tough. If Southwest or Southeast or East, if they manage to kind of balance things out, and if they have close losses, maybe. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be an uphill battle, I think. But I still think we're going to have good football from the city teams this year.
Jeff, while we have you, Class B, we got to hit on that because there's some really talented teams in the area, Class B. Norris, Waverly come to mind, and I know you guys do a tremendous job always including them. Also at LincolnPrepSports.com and incorporating those guys. You give love for Class B. You got a soft spot for some of those schools, don't you?
Because it's been good football.
Yeah.
Now, you look at Bennington, they're on a 39-game win streak. They've won 3 straight state titles. Their first big test is going to be Waverly. Waverly's been hungry. It's been 44 years since Waverly's won a state title or even played in the championship game. I think Waverly, Norris, I think are the two from this area. Now, Pius X drops down to Class B for this 2-year cycle. It'll be interesting to see what the Thunderbolts can do. Then you got Lincoln Northwest, you got Standing Bear, the newer teams. But I think when you look at Class B, if there's going to be a challenge for that title this year, if Bennington wants to repeat again and go for 4 in a row, they're going to defend off Waverly, Norris, Omaha Skutt, and Elkhorn North in no particular order.
That's a murderer's row.
It is.
Class B,
It is, no question.
All right, final thoughts. What makes Friday night high school football for you so special? I know that you're always at a big game, and you get to take in the concession stands, the pomp and circumstance that surrounds it. What hits your heart on a Friday night at the football field?
Probably the purity of the sport at that level. I mean, it's fun, and the preparation for it. It can be tedious and it can be a tasking thing, but when you get into the booth and you get in that driver's seat and you're on the air, it's the most relaxing moment for me. And that's the best part of the job, I think. And that's what makes it Friday nights in the fall and even in the winter for basketball. That's what makes it so much fun. That's the best part, I think. And, I've been doing this now for over 25 years, going on 26 years for play-by-play and color. But this is no doubt why this brings me back every year. Is just the purity of the sport and, knowing the schools, being familiar with the storylines and so forth. That's what makes it so special for me every year.
We cannot wait to hear your voice again calling football games.
Because I know you guys are rushing from site to site, and you got the radio on, and we appreciate you listening.
That's how we do it. We're driving from one game to the next, and we love to have KFOR turned up, and you guys give us such a great color of what's happening in those games and score updates. We always want to know. Sometimes I'll drive away from a game, it's 21-0, and the score flips, and you're like, oh, my goodness, we got to adjust the sports overtime just a little bit. Thank you so much for the time tonight, Jeff, and we appreciate everything you do for high school football in the area.
You bet. Thank you, Kevin.
All right, we're going to be back with more of 10-11's high school football preview show right after this.
Over a little bit.
Welcome back to 10-11's high school football preview show, looking ahead to the 2024 campaign. With Chase Matteson, I'm 10-11 Sports Director Kevin Sjuts. We've gone through Class A across the capital city. Let's pivot and look at Class B, and we will start with Lincoln Pius X, the team that started or played the last 2 seasons in Class A. They're now in Class B. And there's potential for a pretty successful year for the Thunderbolts. The schedule did them no favors in Class A, but now they're with some more similarly enrolled schools. and they're looking to improve on a 2-7 campaign.
Yeah, I believe this is the third year of Pius playing down in Class B, but all their sports are going to Class B this year. And this is a Pius team that is a pretty talented team because they have a lot of senior leadership. And I don't think they had a ton of seniors for Coach Carney last year. And so now that they have a pretty good leadership group, I think that will translate to some better football on the field. And it starts with their quarterback, Colby Volkmer, who's been a 3-year starter for them. So anytime you have a 3-year starter at QB, that's a pretty good thing, too. And they have a pretty good running back.
Volkmer's a pretty big kid, too, isn't he?
Yeah, tall kid. I believe he's committed to, well, I don't want to say the wrong school, but I want to say
he's a football commit.
He's a football commit.
And Joe Andreessen, Chase, I know you did a feature story on Joe, state wrestling champion, and now he's a two-way player for the Thunderbolts. You'll see him in the backfield. You'll see him at linebacker on defense.
Yeah, he only got to play really 4 games healthy last year, missed a lot of last season. But yeah, he is an animal on the wrestling mat, and he's just as good of a football player as well. So they like to run the ball and look for them to lean on Andreessen throughout this season. Hopefully he can stay healthy because he's a major part of the Thunderbolts offense.
From a traditional power to a third-year program. We'll say third, even though it's going to be the second full year for Lincoln Northwest varsity football. The first season had its ups and downs, but last year a breakthrough moment as the Falcons defeated Lexington in the middle of the season. It was in October, 27-14, and that first victory resulted in a dousing of head coach Brian Lauk, one of my favorite guys across the capital city, backwards hat-wearing Brian Lauk, and full of personality. So happy to see his program get the monkey off their back last year.
Yeah, and this is a Lincoln Northwest team that starts the season playing Ralston on August 30th here in 2 days, and that game was 19-14 last year. So the Falcons have a chance to potentially start the season in the win column. They also have a very interesting, we'll get to this team in a second, matchup later in the season on October 17th. They play Standing Bear, which I don't know if that's going to be a rivalry because a few years ago when Lincoln added 2 new high schools, it was Lincoln Northwest and Lincoln Standing Bear. So these are the 2 new schools, maybe, new traditions, new rivalries.
It has to be a rivalry, no?
Yeah. Yeah, like we're the expansion projects.
They're just the 2 new schools. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's pretty natural that they will be quote-unquote rivals. There's a lot of good things happening athletically at Lincoln Northwest. You think about the baseball team that just made the state tournament and won a few games at the state tournament. So a feel-good story on the diamond, now hoping for success on the football field. Speaking of Standing Bear, Chase, you just mentioned them. They are a first-year program at the varsity level. They did have football last year. They played JV only, but this is a program that has a coach in Adam Sjuts, who was a great college football player. Also was on the roster for the Kansas City Chiefs for multiple years, and you got to spend opening day of practice out at Standing Bear.
Yeah, he was a talented football player for Emporia State, and then obviously spent time in the training camp with the Chiefs and Coach Andy Reid. I think he bounced around with 3 NFL teams, practice squads, training camp contracts. So he's been really at every level of football. And now getting to coach and run his own high school football program is something that's really interesting. They don't have any seniors at the school, so it's a very young team just generally. But they have gotten some transfers and some decent players. Cooper Grossroad, who is the younger brother of Reese Grossroad, the talented Pius track and field athlete. He is bigger than his brother and a pretty good receiver, so look to him to be an offensive weapon. And Braylon Koch is a talented athlete in the backfield, also can play linebacker and DB. So I think this is going to be an interesting, whenever you're having a first season at the varsity level, there's always a lot of question marks. And there's really, the bar is on the floor. Like the expectations are very low. But that also, is a good thing, and maybe they'll surprise some people.
Never know. It's a blank slate and exciting times for Lincoln Standing Bear. They opened their first varsity games on the road, so I'm sure that when that came out, some of those folks were maybe a little bit disappointed that's how the inaugural game for the program would be away from Lincoln. But such is the life and such is the schedule determined by the NSAA. You're looking at a video of Lincoln Christian. The Crusaders are coming off a 6-win campaign. They open with the Spirit Sword game against Lincoln Lutheran. That'll be the game of the week for 10-11 staff on this upcoming Friday. It'll be played at Lincoln Pius X High School between Lincoln Christian, Lincoln Lutheran. This Crusaders squad was the first team left out of the playoffs last year.
Yeah, you got to have a neutral site for a big game like the Spirit Sword game. And this is a Lincoln Christian team that's trying to get that Spirit Sword back. They lost that game last season to Lincoln Lutheran.
A 7-0 game, a close one.
Yeah, it was a defensive Big Ten battle, you could call it. But, Lincoln Christian's offense is, kind of reminds me of some Big Ten teams running that kind of flex wishbone, and they don't throw the ball very much. There's no secret about that, but it's definitely an interesting offense, and it's something that they continue to build on. And as you featured when we ran this high school football preview, they have a quarterback that's been in this system since he was in middle school. So I think Truman Paulson's going to lead the ship, and I think they're going to win some games.
For the folks that say all they do is run and they run some more, having been to their practice, I will say they throw the ball, and they're actually fairly talented at doing so. The offense just doesn't call for many passing plays. But I did witness a few segments of practice where they threw the ball almost exclusively, and they have some guys that can throw it, and they have some guys that can catch it.
I wouldn't be upset if Friday night's a shootout.
I'm sorry, I don't think you're going to get a shootout, Chase, who will be on scene for the Battle of the Spirit Sword. On the other side of that matchup, it's Lincoln Lutheran coming off a 4-5 campaign. That was the first under then new head coach Sean Wheating. And nearly the entire team is back in terms of the starters. They have 20 of 22 starting positions with a returning player. And if you add in the specialists, they have their punter back, they have their field goal kicker back, and they have their long snapper back. So it'll look very similar this year to what Lincoln Lutheran had on the field last year.
Yeah, talk about retention. And in the world of transfer portal, NIL, they're doing a good job keeping the guys in-house. And I kind of want to touch on, compared to Lincoln Christian, this is a little bit more of a dynamic offense that knows how to throw the ball. And they do have some playmakers, and Braxton Glines is a talented quarterback for the Lincoln Lutheran. So I think this is a pretty good football team. And as you mentioned, just bringing back that much experience and looking at their schedule, they have an opportunity to win a lot of games this fall and potentially make the playoffs. And with players like Paxton Sjuts on the team.
Well, he is a part of a sophomore class.
I know.
And that was very talented at the middle school level. And last year they had 5 freshmen.
Yeah.
And that's that class. 5 freshmen start at some point during the season. I believe they had 9 to maybe upwards of around 11 play as freshmen. So Lincoln Lutheran, I believe they're on the upswing. And as you mentioned, there's a good point about the schedule. It lightens a little bit this year. They have Conestoga in the mix, and they also add Palmyra to the schedule. However, they end with Bishop Neumann and Malcolm. So better get your wins early in the season. Let's drop down to 6-man football. Chase will let you take it away on Parkview Christian, who's coming off an 8-win campaign and a trip to the Class D6 semifinals.
Yeah, this is a team that, had 19 players on their roster when they won the state title 2 seasons ago. Now down to just 10. Now you only need 6 for 6-man football. It's in the name. But you're definitely fighting an uphill battle, and it's definitely one of the smaller schools in the area, a small school in Lincoln, perhaps. But this is a team that, has experience. They have 1 player that was on that state title team. So a lot of turnover in this program, and that's Thomas Copeland, who you're seeing right there. He's going to look to carry the ball a ton, and in 6-man football, if you can get to the outside, you can score a lot of points. And this is a Parkview Christian team that has a lot of winnable games on their schedule, and they're a team that, even if we look at a roster with only 10 guys, you might think that it's crazy, and only 2 seniors on the roster. They know how to win football games, and they've been doing it for the past few years.
Yeah, P.J. Book, the head coach, he can scheme up with the best of them, and you got to love a 4 o'clock start, kickoff in North Lincoln there outside the Parkview Christian School. It's such a cool field, and I love the afternoon football. It's a good way to start a Friday of high school football.
Yeah, the Pats like to be the appetizer course, or the first course, right, of the meal that is Friday night football here in the Lincoln area.
Well, one of the guys who really stood out under the Friday night lights last year was Conor Booth, a running back from Bishop Neumann. He led the state in rushing. We're going to talk to him live on 10-11's High School Football Preview Show right after this. Welcome back to 10-11's High School Football Preview Show. We've made it through the teams across the capital city. Let's look right outside, but staying in Lancaster County. The Norris Titans, 7-4 a season ago, 15 starters back. Marcus Nelson, one of the key names. And they have a pretty daunting schedule, but you know what? Ty Twarling knows how to get this squad into the postseason.
Yeah, well, a lot of teams make the playoffs in Class B, and this is a Norris team that has been to the playoffs, I believe, each of the last 6 seasons. So they've been pretty successful in winning football games. And, yeah, a lot of talented players back for the Titans, right?
Marcus Nelson is a Nebraska City running back transfer who looks to make a difference, but he's actually not the starter. The starter is actually Crew Moeller at running back.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Jarrett Barron's the quarterback.
Well, Jarrett Barron's is the starting quarterback and one of the captains as well, but Crew Moeller is the starting running back, but I think they're pretty high on this guy from Nebraska City to be one of their dynamic playmakers. And this is a Norris team that, they had some pretty big win totals last year. They like to score the football, and they're a talented offensive team that is going to be running up the score on some people.
Norris is just gaining fans left and right here because over this video, Chase, we just saw a neck brace, like the neck roll. We saw a couple mullets in there and guy just throwing it around. So I think the Norris bandwagon is probably gaining a few people just by watching this.
Yeah, they're a good-looking team, and they play hard. They play tough down in Firth. So it's going to be exciting for them this season.
A team that Jeff Motz had a lot of praise for, the Waverly Vikings, making it deep every year under Reed Manstead, and this year might be the exact same. 11-1 a season ago. They have 11 returning starters. They have Carter McMillan at quarterback, and Bennington is the start for the Vikings, and it doesn't get much tougher than that, but that's a doozy of a Week 1 game. Bennington versus Waverly on August 30th.
Yeah, this is a Waverly team that hasn't been to the state title game since 1980, so it's been a while, but they've been in the semifinal game, right, that knocking on the door the past few years, right? And so this is just a hump that they can't get over, and obviously, yeah, Bennington is the target for Week 1, and that's just a very, very difficult opponent right from the jump. And this is a new quarterback, is Noah Motz. The Wayne State commit is up and out of there, the senior last year, who was a very good player for them. But I think Reed Manstead has really figured out something special in Waverly, that whatever their cast of character is, they've been successful.
You got to believe that at some point they will break through. And I can recall so many of these Friday nights in the semifinal round where it is, this could be Waverly's year. They've got the matchup. I know it's been Omaha Scud on the opposite side of that, and they've just had Waverly's number. I just have to believe at some point Waverly gets through to the championship round, and I feel no different this year, that maybe this is the year for the Vikings.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about being knocking on the doorstep, but this is a very good Waverly football team, and as we mentioned, they just have been so close in so many consistent seasons that they're trying to build to something, and it starts with Week 1 with one of probably their toughest opponent on the schedule all season long. But Waverly's going to win a lot of games again this year.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We have a few more things up our sleeve for the high school preview show here on 10-11 Streaming Studio. So stick with us. We'll be back in a few. We're back on the high school football preview show in the 10-11 Streaming Studio. Opening day on Thursday with a 4:30 game at Seacrest Field between Elkhorn South and Lincoln East. Kevin Sjuts alongside Chase Matteson. There's some big-time games in week number 1. It's not just Thursday night football. There's also some great ones on Friday night football. Spirit Sword will be our game of the week.
Yeah, we didn't have any week 0 games this year. I mean, I remember last year we had, a premier matchup in Lincoln Northwest versus Lincoln Pius that just kicked things off a week early last season. This year, back to some normalcy with the main slate of games on Friday night. And, yeah, you're looking at it right now, a ton of good opponents. Norris playing Omaha. Scott Waverly, as we mentioned before the break, their toughest opponent of the year. The Vikings have to play Bennington, which is just very tough. Lincoln North Star, Lincoln Southwest, that's another great all-city matchup. And then, as we mentioned, Bishop Neumann playing Norfolk Catholic. That's a tough game.
Well, that's the big one right there across the state. You have Norfolk Catholic, a perennial power, defending champs. Bishop Neumann, one of the top players in the state, and Conor Booth, a Husker recruit who plans to play in Lincoln in both baseball and football, rushed for more than 2,000 yards and 31 touchdowns a season ago. Aquinas plays Scotus Central Catholic, and then in 8-man football, I like this matchup, Elmwood Murdoch versus BDS.
Yeah, that's a pretty good matchup right there, and I think looking at this entire slate of games, I'm obviously going to be at the Spirit Sword game, but I think this is you're gonna find out who is the real deal pretty early on in week 1. Because if Waverly beats a team like Bennington, then they have a great program. If Norris beats Scott, so we're going to find a lot more about some of our area teams and the teams we'll be covering throughout the season right off the jump.
All right, full disclosure here, we're having some technical difficulties. We said earlier that we would be interviewing Conor Booth live here on the show. We're having some issues. He was going to join us via Zoom, just got done with practice. Blame Coach Shadle. Maybe he gave him too big of a workload, and, they're working him really hard. I don't know, Cole. Maybe you got to back off your star horse there. But unfortunately, we're not going to have the interview with Conor Booth, but we will be following him throughout the season. He's too good of a player not to be doing so. As we mentioned, Conor Booth, just a tremendous talent. Last year, get this, 2,159 rushing yards and 31 touchdowns. He averaged more than 10 yards per carry, and he's going to be on the field as Bishop Neumann opens the season against Norfolk Catholic in Wahoo on Friday night. So he's one of the top players in the state. Here are 10 others. This, according to 24/7 Sports, Christian Jones from Omaha Westside. He's the number 1 recruit
and still uncommitted
in the Cornhusker State. Remember, last year was undisputed because it was Carter Nelson out of Ainsworth. This year, it looks like the top guy is Christian Jones.
Yeah, and, people want him to be a Husker. He's vying for some other schools as well. Talented Omaha Westside product, and linebacker also plays on offense as well. So he's going to be a story to follow just because I wouldn't be surprised if we see Matt Rule on the sidelines of a Westside game this fall, trying to get him to pull over to get that commitment. But yeah, here's a lot of other talented names. I believe Pierce Mooberry is another Husker commit. A lot of good talented players on this list.
I believe on this list maybe 5 are going to Nebraska or currently planning on going to Nebraska. Another name that I like to shout out here is Tyson Terry, a guy who is just a beast in the trenches, one of the best wrestlers in the country. Wrestles at heavyweight, and if you make it to the second period, you might as well, put that on your resume that you made it past the first 2 minutes against Tyson Terry.
He reminds me of a young Nash Hutmaker.
It's a pretty good comparison.
I know Nash was not a Nebraska kid, but he's kind of doing the same trajectory, being a dominant state wrestler and then also a dominant D lineman.
Right. We apologize again for not having Conor Booth on the show tonight, but as we mentioned, we'll be following him throughout the year. We want to finish with something a little bit light and fun here. There is a Twitter account out there that puts the over-under totals across the state, projecting high school football, most notably Class A. We like to have some fun with it. There are so many others that follow high school football. They look at this, and it makes for great conversation. Chase, I know you sent it to me via text message, I think about 2 minutes after they dropped it. And I got to get your take. If you're running to Vegas to place a wager on high school football across Nebraska, where are you going?
I like Lincoln Southeast over 4.5 wins. It's plus 115 odds. It's good money right there. And I think they win 5 games. The Knights are a good, talented team under Coach Gatula, and are building something there. And we talked about this at the beginning of the show, that there's all these Lincoln teams, right? You know, they kind of are the little brother in Class A to the Omaha schools. And that's been proven in the state tournament every year, or the state playoffs, I guess I should say. But we're going to see one of these Lincoln teams come out of the pack in front and as the best school in our area, or our coverage area, or Lancaster County. And I think it could be the Lincoln Southeast.
You have it in front of you?
Mm-hmm.
The over. What do they have Lincoln Northeast at?
Lincoln Northeast, 2.5 wins.
I'm taking over all day long. I'm going to go over Lincoln Northeast 2.5.
It's okay. It's minus 115 odds. So
I mean, they haven't had
they're
more
believing
than
the Rockets
2.5
are going to
wins
win
over the last 3 years, but
that's an interesting line. 2.5 wins.
I'm taking the Rockets over.
Yeah, I like the over for Lincoln High. They're projecting them to only win half a game. So
they got to just get one.
Just got to get one.
Okay. All right. Way to go big there, big guy. Lincoln High taking the one win. All right. We're excited for the season ahead. Thanks for watching the 10-11 high school football preview show. Chase, final thoughts. What are you ready for? You excited?
Yeah, I'm excited for tomorrow afternoon to see what this Lincoln East Spartan team looks like and a good matchup. And then for Friday night, let's see if Lincoln Christian can. It's a game, and we'll talk about it on Friday as well. But it means a lot more to the people in this area and the communities within each of those programs. So I'm ready for kind of the storylines off the field as well as the football, of course, on the field.
I just want the atmosphere back. I heard the Holdridge Dusters marching band at the State Fair on Tuesday, and just hearing the percussion and the chants, it just got me in this mindset of I want to see the football on the field, the band in the stands, the school spirit, the cheer team, all of it. I just love it all. It's such a great time, and we're going to have you covered all throughout the season with sports overtime and highlights throughout the week on 10-11 Sports. You have something else to add there, Chase?
You hit the nail on the head right there. The nostalgia about some of these small towns, the cornfields in the background of Johnson Brock, or the concrete steps that have been there ever for David City and Aquinas Catholic. Just the pageantry of some of this high school
speaking
football.
My heart. You just talked about David City Park.
Yeah, just the pageantry behind some of this local high school football, and then you have the new age, the Standing Bears, the UBT Stadium, the planes landing in the background. There's different characters about every team and every program, and I think that's what makes covering it so special, and then also just bring such a different element to some of these games.
All right, season starts on Thursday. We can't wait. Sports Overtime, the first one of the year, coming up this Friday at about 10:15, 10:20 p.m. We also got to sneak in some Nebraska volleyball that night as well. So it is going to be a busy time of year, but a fun time of year. We cannot wait. For more high school football coverage, make sure you stay tuned to 1011now.com. And then we invite you to join us on Sports Overtime every Friday during the high school football season. With Chase Matteson, I'm Kevin Sjuts. Thanks for watching.